بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين على امور الدنيا والدين وصلى الله على سيدنا المرسلين الخاتم النبيين وعلى اله واصحابه اجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. In light of the topic today, I do, as the host just very kindly did, I want to thank you all for coming today. First of all, having me here. Secondly, this is a Saturday afternoon, and there's so many other things that can be done. It's a beautiful day outside, and it's actually kind of warm, and those days don't come very often. You know, I've been to Scotland a few times before, and I've always had to have a couple extra coats. So today is a wonderful day, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, because I want you to enjoy the day. Because, you know, even like with the topic of the talk today, about the craziness of the world, you know, and I think a lot of this, I'm not going to offer necessarily the solution, but just a few things to think about as we all try to find our own solutions. And a lot of this has to deal with kind of reclaiming who we are as human beings and enjoying the small things and looking at what Allah has given us, what God has given us in terms of this creation, and kind of going back and rehashing out who we are, where we are, and where we're going in this life. And so part of that is, just as I said, enjoying some of the creation that Allah has given us, and that is like these beautiful days, and enjoying the sunshine, and enjoying the blue skies, and enjoying even the crisp, you know, breeze that, you know, does come. We want to spend time really returning back to the point of view of having our senses heightened. Because we're in a time now, because of our technological advances, where we have lost a lot of our senses. I don't know about most of you. I know that when I was a child, you know, the majority of my time was spent outside. The majority of my time was, you know, in the United States, you know, exploring the woods by my home, in the creeks, you know, jumping around in little rivers and little streams that were by my home, and you know, going over to my mate's house and spending time there, and him coming to my house to spend time. And we didn't call first. We weren't able to text. You actually had to go to the house, knock on the door. Can Steve play? You know, can Steve come out? You know, there was more human interaction. There was more time where we were in the parks playing and on the monkey bars and making tree houses, and me falling out of trees, playing Spider-Man, jumping from branch to branch, or Tarzan, or whatever, you know, my imagination could come up with. And that was the point. We had imagination. And our imagination was something that we had and we enjoyed outside the home. We were able to create. We were able to really just enjoy, you know, life. And now we're at a time where, you know I can't get my children outside the house. I have to throw them out. But even still, when I send them outside, I still have to watch them because of the dangers of someone else or other things that could possibly happen to them because of some sick-minded human individual. So now, you know, I have to get involved with their ability to unplug and to reconnect. And for a lot of parents, that, you know, most parents don't want to be involved anymore. I even find myself sometimes not necessarily wanting to be involved, just get outside and go, but then you have to think, well, you have the little ones, and you have to go outside and check, and sometimes they want you to be a part of their experience. Especially when you take your children to the park, and then they want to play catch, or they want to play monster, or they want to play tag, or something like this, you know, and it's very interesting when you sit back and just really look and say, wow, you know, when I was a kid, we just played by ourselves, but now they want mom and dad to play with them. Well, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because even as adults, we become desensitized to the needs of children. We become desensitized to, you know, reaching out and allowing, you know, and smelling the flowers. and showing our children how to smell the flowers. I have a friend who lives in the south of Spain, and she converted to Islam. And she was saying to me that, the people in her community, they feel like Islam is nothing more than memorizing the Quran and the women dressing a certain kind of way, and then just kind of what happens in the household, and that's it. She says, I purposely live on the countryside because I want, as I hear Quran, because she hasn't been able to memorize, but she says, when I hear Quran, I want to be able to experience it. And she says, I experience it because I'm living in the countryside, and I take time to watch the flowers as they bloom. I take time to watch the budding of new branches on a tree. I take time to listen to the winds as they blow across the tall grass and hearing the grass. Listening to the sounds of submission. Listening to the sounds of creation submitting itself to the will and the command of God, telling it to bend and to sway as the winds blow across it, and to make that the sound of submission, as I like to call it. Because that's what you're hearing. You can call it the song of the grass, or the sounds of submission, but I like the sound of submission better. It's a little more poetic. I like to hear the sounds of the trees as the wind blows through the leaves, or the bird song. This is experiencing Quran. Because we're experiencing and we're witnessing the creation. We're witnessing Allah's commands being manifested through the movements of the trees and the blowing of the wind. We're seeing the attribute of Allah being al-Khaliq, the creator. We're witnessing Allah's attribute of being al-Latif, the gentle one, because you see how when you watch the wind blow across the tops of the grass, it's all soft. It's not hard. Even when we go outside and we feel that crisp air, and sometimes it can be a little hard, but more times than not, it's really soft. It's just cold, it's crisp. But in that, you begin to feel the power of God. For this particular sister, her senses have been heightened. Her senses have been heightened. And she takes time, and obviously she's one of the people who like to meditate and things like this. But even within that, she's finding herself and learning to reconnect with self. Which, when hearing these things, became a lesson for myself. Because now I'm looking, I'm saying, wow, it is so true that we become so ritualistic in certain actions and we've forgotten connection. And this is a big thing. We've forgotten connection. We've forgotten how to reconnect and be human beings again. One professor did he was doing some research on this issue of how technology affects us. And he was saying that if we were to go camping, just go into the countryside, go camping, turn off your phone, no computer, no nothing, no radio, no MP3 player, just you. He said for 2 days, that the human being will be able to reconnect to his very essence, his very being, his humanity that he's losing as a result of having his face in that computer and that cell phone or your iPad or in front of the computer screens. He said because we're losing it. We're losing our senses because we're dulling. We're becoming dulled because we're always like this. We're always like this, or, okay, maybe this way, or here. Especially taking selfies. Right? By the way, for those who like to take those little selfies making the duck face, don't do it. In the Dominican Republic, they have a saying. They say, "Tu parece como un culo de gallina," which means you look like the butt of a chicken. All right? And I had to think about that. Because, there, when I was living there, if we wanted, halal meat that's cut according to Islamic law, or killed according to Islamic law, or slaughtered according to Islamic law for consumption, we'd have to go kill the animals ourselves. So I used to go out to one of the poultry houses, and you have to chase these chickens down because they have them in a little area, and you have to go and choose one, and you have to actually grab it yourself. Well, I never did. I had someone else do it. I have a problem with chickens. But I would have someone else grab it for me, but you can see it sometimes, you know. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, they were right. It does look like the butt of the chicken. But anyways, so please tell your friends, no more duck faces. You know, I don't know how you got a duck face in the first place, but you know, anyways, I'm digressing. But the thing here is that we're constantly looking at ourselves. You know, and speaking of the Dominican Republic, a lot of times you would see people at night kind of sitting out in front of their houses, right? Because a lot of people are poor. They couldn't afford to go to the clubs. They can't afford to go eating. You know, eating at Pizza Hut is considered fine dining in the Dominican Republic. If you took someone to Pizza Hut for dinner, you have a friend for life. You know, and people eating sometimes with forks and knives. I'm like, seriously? You know, that's pizza, you know, but it was a big thing for them. So a lot of times they're sitting outside in these little plastic chairs in the dark, right? And they're sitting there, just a family, and you know, sometimes they're out talking, you know, got the little chihuahuas running around, and you know, just having a good time. You know, they drink and stuff. They're not Muslim, or you know, some aren't as religious as they ought to be, because we know Christians don't necessarily drink as well. But nonetheless, they have their drinks and they're talking and stuff. But when it's dark and you're walking down the street, you always see like this little square light. And once you get up on the person, it's someone on the phone, Facebook, Instagram. And I was like, wow. So it would look like a nice family outing, just sitting outside and enjoying each other, which they are in a way. They're still tainted with that technology. And so even though they're all together, they're still far apart. I remember just recently I was with my son and another little guy, and we were just sitting in the house, we were talking, but then we were just sitting there on the phones. I said, wow, how far are we moving away from each other? Or in my workplace, my coworker sits like right here where this red chair is. I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden the chat pops up, and she's asking me for some information. And I just turn around, no, Lil, I don't have it. You know, and I'm like, why are you sending me a chat message? This is not a secret. You know, you're not telling me anything private. So why are you sending me a chat when you sit right here? That is so lazy. But then I even see myself getting lazy sometimes because, you know, some things you get a little spoiled with, like, you know, the little scroll in the middle of the mouse. And you click on the page and you scroll and it starts going down. But sometimes that doesn't work. And I get exhausted thinking, oh, now I gotta go to the scroll bar, I gotta go to the bottom and start clicking a bunch of times to make the scroll go down, or just hold it so it just goes quickly. Or, you know, Apple computers make it really bad because you do the 2-finger deal and the whole page will move for you. And then you get a Dell computer and then you start doing it and it doesn't work. You're like, okay, let's move over here. You know, and how is that? How do you get tired? How do you get frustrated just with these little bitty things? Let alone talking to one another, interacting with one another. This is what we're losing. When we can be right next to each other, but we're so far apart because we're in just another world of texting and all these other things that are out there. We've actually started becoming narcissistic in that we're taking pictures of ourselves and we can just throw them all over the place. We like being seen. We like showing pictures of places we've been to make it seem as though we're just living a wonderful life. Because everybody else is posting pictures, and so you don't want to feel left out, so you're going to post pictures as well. You'll go places on purpose just so you can take a quick picture. Standing by cars that are not even yours. Just to put it on the Facebook or put it on some Instagram thing or whatever else is out there. I don't even know. I can't keep up. Because you're giving, now see what's happening is you're giving a false perception of life, of your life. And what happens is that you're losing yourself even more. In one way, we're very empowered because now I have a voice. I can write a blog and put it out there and the world can see it. I can say what I want to on Facebook. I can post on your page. Just write whatever I want to. And if you try and block me, then I'll just send you a message. Because I can find you, and I can still send you a message and give you a piece of my mind. And not only can I find you, I can find your phone number and I can call you. I can get your email address right off of Facebook. The CIA was saying that they're very happy with Facebook because people put more of the information on Facebook than they do in our census. I don't know if you have censuses in this country, but in our country, people put more information on Facebook than they will on their census. There was an experiment they did. They were trying to make a point. And what they did was they had this guy, the long hair. It was like, salt and pepper. He had on a little tunic, made out of linen pants. And he spoke very soft. And people were coming into his tent. And he was like, "Hi, how are you? Please, have a seat." And he would grab you by the hands a little gently and look at you and smile and have a seat, please. And the people would sit down. And as they sat down, and he said, "So, you had a broken leg 2 weeks ago. How are you feeling?" The person was like, "How did you know I had a broken leg?" "Your mother's dog fell in the hole. Were you guys able to get it out?" And they're like, "Oh my God, how do you know my mother's dog fell in the hole?" And the other person, "Your boyfriend broke up with you and you were really hurt, weren't you?" And everybody was so amazed. He's going on and on and on and on, right? So then he got all the people and he stood them up in front of them. And then he said, "I want you to see this, please." He turns around and they drop the wall and there's guys on computers on everybody's Facebook page. And he had an earpiece. And they were telling, they were feeding him the information about this particular person. You see how personal, people were getting very personal. And he was just getting all their information because everybody's putting it on Facebook. You see? So we're out there just throwing everything out. It's like we feel connected. We are connected. But then it starts becoming too much when, people, "Good night, Facebook. See you, Facebook world." People get up in the morning, jump right on. "Good morning, Facebook family." And some people actually need it. And this is what becomes really bad. That people actually need the social media to feel like they're connected to other people because in reality, in their immediate lives, in their tangible lives, they have no connections. And through these mediums, even though, like I say, we're putting out blogs, we're telling people what we want to tell, we're giving out our stories, we feel like we have a voice. We do feel somewhat empowered. But at the same time, we're still being conditioned. And our conditioning was conditioned. There's a documentary you should watch called The Power of Nightmares. It's kind of dry, but it's really deep. And basically what they were saying is that you're being sold your own personality. You're being sold your own character. You're being driven towards a lifestyle you thought your own. They were talking about the hippie movement in the United States. And that whole movement, because before, the powers that be, there were certain companies that had put out marketing campaigns to make you feel like you needed certain services and certain goods. They made you feel like you needed it. But then there was a group of people saying, "Look, we see what's happening. These corporations and these governments are trying to make us feel like we need stuff that we don't need. And we should reject it. We're going to reject society." Hence the creation and the beginning of the revolution, the hippie revolution. But the thing was, corporations started saying, "Okay, these guys are getting into individualism. So what are we going to do? We're going to market individualism." So you're in the stores buying things thinking that I'm being different, I'm being me, I'm buying my own thing because I'm going to express myself the way I want to express it. But in reality, they're marketing your individualism. They're marketing your character and your identity. So your conditioning has been conditioned. And then you lose yourself. And as we're losing ourselves, we're falling out of touch with the ability to seek truth. So when we're looking at all the things that are happening in the world, we're looking at what's happening before us. And honestly, when you think about, not everybody, but for some of us, we go with the flow of the news. One minute, we were all into the news about Syria. The next minute, it became about ISIS in Iraq. Then the next minute, it was about things going on in Pakistan. Then the next minute, it's all about Ebola. And we're just jumping from one thing to the next. And some people are, all about Ebola, all worried about Ebola. We forgot about ISIS, and then all of a sudden we worry about ISIS. We forgot about Pakistan, and then we got back to Pakistan. We forgot all about Syria, and then we get back to Syria, we forgot about Ebola. And then we'll get some corporate scandal, and just as it gets really big, and the big wigs are really about to get hit, we just dropped some bombs in so-and-so country, and all the news will be about that, and we've forgotten about these things happening over here. Or we forgot about those black guys who got shot up in Ferguson, or the other guys who got shot in Florida, and all these different things that are coming about, because we need to move public opinion. We got to wave it around. We got to spread it out. There are policies that we want. There are policies that need to be made, and we need to have the public eye on certain things so that we can get what we want. Plato used to say that, he said that the military is nothing more than a tool of politics. I'd say that politics is nothing more than a tool of big business. Because big business is trying to make moves. And it needs the government to do certain things. And in order to do certain things now to prevent a hippie revolution from happening again, we can't have people protesting our war like they did in Vietnam and part in Korea. We've got to make sure that people are on board. So we've got to create certain things and create a certain idea and a certain perspective in the minds of the people so that they will be willing to allow us to do whatever it is we wish to do. If you really start looking around, like even during the time when America and the UK went into Afghanistan. Before that, when the Taliban had taken over, the Taliban wasn't the problem. They said, look, they wanted a pipeline to go through Afghanistan. Because it was easy to go through Afghanistan because they could have taken it through Iran, but Iran wanted too much money. And it would have been more work, and they would have had to pay more money. So they said, well, we will run it through Afghanistan, but the Taliban said no. And they said that, well, you guys could be like the next Saudi Arabia and all this, that, and the other. They said no. Well, then we have the war in in Afghanistan. Now, who was the main broker or the liaison between the oil companies and Afghanistan? President Karzai. The man that became president. And guess what? They've got a pipeline. Now, I haven't been able to follow and get information as to did they complete it or not. I have no clue because the news has shifted. So I don't know. But I understood up to that point what was happening. You see what I'm saying? The tides change. News changes. People want certain things to happen so we can do other things. I remember way back when Guatemala, they had a new president. This was like in the, I want to say in the 70s, or 60s actually, a little bit before I was born actually. Guatemala had received a new president. And when he became president, he decided he was going to nationalize all of the companies that were in his, all of the companies harvesting fruits, right? And at that time, a company called Chiquita, right? I don't know if you guys get Chiquita bananas, but we have in the United States, everyone's saying yes. So this company got upset because if he nationalizes it, that means we're out. And we're going to lose money. So the head of Chiquita Bananas went to President Nixon and said, you got to do something about this guy. And so what did Nixon do? He was on TV. This man's a communist, and we got to get him out of here. And we're going to try and set up a coup. We're going to work with the rebels who want real freedom. We want, they're attacking our democracy. He's a communist. The guy wasn't even communist. He had nothing to do with communism. But all he needed to do, the president needed to do, was to tell everybody this man is a communist. And who's going to do the research? Who's going to research? Nobody. President said it. Wow, that commie. Get him. Because, the movies were all about America versus the Russian military, the Russian government. So we already have this thing going back and forth between communism and democracy. And so what happens? They wound up having this man killed. Chiquita Bananas maintains its reign in Guatemala to this day. And you see this all the time. Same thing in Cuba when Fidel Castro nationalized everything. That's why America doesn't like Cuba. It had nothing to do with them becoming communists. They kicked out all the companies and nationalized everything. And then when they were looking for someone to help them, they couldn't find anybody except Russia. So that's why he accepted communism as their form of government. Another slap in the face to the United States. So America has just been embarrassed. This is why they have problems with Cuba and Fidel Castro and his brother. But we're not led to believe that. Did you know Cuba offered to take 500 black Americans and give them free medical school? Now, Cuba has probably the second, if not the third, best medical school in the world. And they were going to take 500 black people and give them free medical school. The American government never said a word about it. They didn't want it to happen for a host of reasons. But you understand the point. We're guided, we're given misinformation, and we're given too much information to the point where we can't sort out what is right and what is not. We can't make heads or tails. Information is power. Understanding is power. But what's even more power is that human connection. What's even more powerful is us being able to decipher who we are as individuals. To redefine who we are, because many of us don't even know who we are. We've lost our definition, and we've allowed ourselves to be defined by others. And this is the major problem. That we cannot even define, many of us, I'm not saying everyone, but many of us cannot define who we are. You can say, oh, I'm Muslim. Okay, well, what does that mean? You can say I'm Christian, but what does that mean? I'm atheist, what does that mean? What does it mean for you? And it's not going to necessarily mean the same for everybody. I can give you definitions all day long. I can tell you what the scholars have said, and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, you've got to define you for you. You understand what it means to be a Muslim. You understand what it means to be a Christian. You understand what it means to be whatever it is you claim to follow, if anything at all. But at the same time, you need to be able to define yourself within the realm of what you claim. And if you're not claiming anything, then you still need to look at yourself and say, well, where am I in this world? It's not the old question of what's my purpose. It's not about that. It's about who you are. Who are you and where are you? Now, obviously, since I am Muslim, my thought is, where am I in relationship to my Lord? Where am I in understanding who He is? And that helps me to understand who I am. It also tells me what I am not. And I can deal with that because now I can look at that as my basis and say, okay, let me build on who I am as a servant. And what does it mean to be a servant? What does it mean for me to say that I'm Muslim or to call myself a believer? What does that mean? How do I define that? How do I make that grow? How do I nurture that? How do I get in tune with me? How do I get in tune with my own soul? Many of us, the majority of us, are creatures of desire. We're not creatures of the soul. We're supposed to be. We're supposed to be. But we're not. We are creatures of desire. We're always wanting. We're always in need of something. You know, it was interesting. When I first came to the UK, I was watching a film called How to Be a Billionaire. And the question arose, what happens when you have everything? When you've got the boat, you've got the private jet, you've got the big house, you've got the nice suits, you've got the nice cars, you've got all the nice watches and jewelry. You can travel whenever you want. You can go wherever you wish and always have top accommodations. What happens when you have everything? In other words, what happens when the wanting no longer exists? Or is it possible to be at a state where wanting no longer exists? And one of the brothers we were discussing this with, as we were watching the show, he said to me, he says, Jamal, what would you do? What happens if you had all of this? I said, the wanting doesn't stop. It changes. Now I'm going to start doing stupid things. I'm going to do those death-defying things. You know, I'm going to go parachuting with a snowboard. I'm going to start putting my life on the line because there's nothing else. I need a new form of stimulation. I might jump out the airplane and say, you know, they tell you at 3,000 feet you're supposed to pull the chute, but I'm going to wait till it's 2 or 1.5. Because it's just, I need the thrill. Because my life is just empty because I've got everything. In an interview with Jim Carrey, he said that I wish that everyone could be rich and famous so that you could see that this is not the end. This is not where it's at. We strive and struggle for all the material things in life, but then once you get it, it's like, really? This is it? I did all of this for this? You know, and then, you know, a lot of stars, they make it, and then, you know, they're broke. Now what do? You were at the top, and now you're right back at the bottom, probably worse than when you started. Because now you're in debt. Owing 2-3 million pounds in back taxes. Before you didn't have that problem, now you do. What do you do when the wanting stops, or can it actually stop? Then your eyes have to open up to something different. I was watching another documentary on George Harris from the Beatles. And this man, as we all know, all those guys were very rich. Very rich. But in his days, again, his level of wanting changed. He started getting into meditation. He started, you know, as we understand from the history, he was doing mushrooms and hallucinating. And then he started having some type of spiritual connection, and then he realized, boop, this is it. The next level for me is spirituality. All this mundane life that I've been living, because I've got the money to do whatever he wanted. But it wasn't fulfilling, is the point. Because he had no need for anything, but he was no longer fulfilled with where he was at in life. So what did he do? He found spirituality. Where the others didn't, they're still drinking and hanging out and doing what they do. With people who live those types of lifestyles. But for him, he took the spiritual route. Got into meditation, was meeting with the gurus, playing the big guitar, I don't know what they're called.
Sitar.
The sitar, thank you. And he was playing this, and he was really getting into it. You know, he's a guitarist. So he's getting into it and playing and spending time with the guru and understanding how the sound of the music really had a spiritual connection, and he was really getting deep into this, and then trying to reach out to his mates and trying to get them into it, but they weren't buying it. That's not where they were. But his spiritual eye, his spiritual heart, his spiritual awakening came through this meditation and things like this. He left the mushrooms because eventually you realize that the only reason why you were continuously using these drugs is because you first had that first high and that first opening. It's like an epiphany, and now you're just using it over and over again so that you can try and get the same experience. But the problem is you're never going to get that same experience. So that's how people get addicted. They're looking for that same high, and they're not finding it. So they keep doing it, because I want that same feeling. And it's not there. And so he had to put it away and just really got into the sound of the music in his meditation. The thing is, as Muslims, as people of God, we've already been given these tools to reconnect spiritually. But for us, what does it mean to be spiritual? It doesn't just mean, you're sitting around saying, La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, and, all of a sudden the bright lights come on, oh. You just have this opening, and you start to sing angels and all this other stuff. It doesn't work that way, folks. I remember when I was in Yemen, there was a cave there where one of the scholars used to go and sit down and, meditate and read Quran and do dhikr with his beads and sing different litanies. And a bunch of the young guys who had come from the UK had gone out there to this cave to sit down, and they wanted to do it the same thing in the same place, right? So one of the guys from Luton, according to what he shared to everybody, he saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before him. And whether it's true or not, don't know. It's not my business, but this is what he told everyone. And when he told everyone, there were other brothers who wanted the same experience. So these brothers would go out to this cave in the middle of the night, sitting in the dark, with eyes closed, screaming, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Expecting to get the same type of experience. But the problem with that is that you're never going to gain that same experience because there's a prerequisite. You get the guy who went the first time, he didn't go there with the intention of seeing anything. He went there just so he could be in a place where a scholar had been and just kind of repeat the same action. To read the Quran, to do a little dhikr in seclusion. That was it. And if that's what Allah gave him, then that's what Allah gave him for his sincerity and his open-heartedness. Whereas these guys came there with the purpose of trying to see something and experience something, so really they could go back and tell everybody, guess what I saw? You see, they wanted to have a level of status. And good and well it was going on Facebook. And they're going to bolster it up, yes, I have done my dhikr and I received the gift of seeing the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they're going to bolster it up and have all this great stuff and have all these people going, oh, mashallah, tabarakallah. Allah, 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 Allah. And that's what happens. People do things to get praise, to let everybody know, to hear the comments. How many times, be honest, you don't have to say anything, but how many times have you posted something on Facebook, shut it down, and went back just so you could see what comments were written? Or you posted a picture and you came back, oh, I wonder if anybody said anything. And if no one did, you're like, whoa, what happened? You start feeling indifferent. Like, I thought this was important. How come no one else thought it was important? You see, we start to become narcissists. We think that we're the center of things and people should be responding to us. The point that I was leading to is that when we try and look at spiritually and understanding who and where we are, one, we're not looking for experiences per se. We're looking for connection. We're looking for understanding. If you feel something or you gain something, Allahu Akbar. But then when you continue this, if you get into meditation and all of a sudden you're feeling something and it's like great, and wow, you feel like, you afterwards you're like, wow, that was really deep. The next time you go into meditation, you're not supposed to go in and expect to feel the same thing again. Because now you're searching for something that came to you when you weren't searching. You were just there. You were in a state of just being. So now you need to return back to that state of just being and hoping that you'll go beyond that last feeling. You don't want the same thing. You want to go beyond. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran to look into yourselves. Look into creation. So what does that mean for us? To look at ourselves and to look into creation. Well, we are a part of creation. Our souls are a part of creation. Our desires are a part of creation. So we need to, look at and expose ourselves to ourselves. Okay, these are my desires. Let me put this to the side and let me focus on my soul, which has been getting no attention. I don't even know it. I don't even know my own heart. Let me gain some understanding, some traction under my feet towards understanding me. And reaching deep and understanding the real me, not the me that I personify out there to the world on whatever medium, or even just how I would dress and walk down the street, giving the perception that I am something other than what I really am. Let me look deeper into myself. Let me be a little more introspective and understanding where I am. And then asking Allah to allow us to tap into me. And then do those things that help to nurture the soul and pushing back the beast of desires. We should be at a point where we're riding the beast of desires, not the beast riding on us, guiding us to which way we should go. Learning how to discipline ourselves. We find some form of discipline as Muslims in our prayer for those who are serious about their prayer 5 times a day. We find discipline in it, or discipline when we're fasting during the month of Ramadan. Or for those who fast outside of the month of Ramadan, because it's actually harder to fast outside of Ramadan than it is in Ramadan. Because in Ramadan, everybody's fasting, so it's easier. Outside of Ramadan, it's just you. But even in that, anytime we fast, we have to understand that that fast is between, that act of fasting is between you and Allah. And then there has to be some point of realization as to the fact that Allah is always aware of the things that we do. And that we're never alone. So as we're going through our journey, we're not really going through the journey alone, even though I say it's you and it's only you, but the reality is that Allah is also there. And that's also something that has to be discovered. And again, as we're looking into ourselves, begin to look out into the world. As we become acquainted with the planet of self, as we begin to explore the planet of self, we start finding things that we like and we don't like, and we kind of remove the things that we don't like. And then as we do that, we find ourselves wanting, you'll find yourself with your senses, you start hearing things differently. You'll start becoming more sensitive towards smell. Right? Especially for those who really get into meditation. I'm not necessarily pushing meditation, but I am saying you should engage in some meditation, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there are signs for those who reflect. There are signs for those who contemplate. So the contemplation is a very strong part of our religion. Junaid, may Allah be pleased with him, when he's an old scholar, old sage, and when he was young, he lived in a cave. He left his family because he wanted to study. And his family wanted him to stay just herding the sheep. And he left his family to go and study Islam. And he used to live in this little cave near the oceans. He lived in Morocco. And what he would do is he would go to the classes, go to the masjids, and listen to at least one hadith, right, one tradition of the Prophet ﷺ from the hadith scholars. And he would listen to that one hadith and go back to his cave that he was living in, and he would contemplate that hadith. He would look at that hadith from different directions, and he would, it wasn't just about memorizing it, but he contemplated, and he would contemplate it, and he would think about it until that hadith became a part of his being. It became a part of him, a part of who he is. So then, when he began to talk to people about that particular hadith or anything that he's relating as a result of internalizing that hadith, his words weren't just some words he was regurgitating from a text or from the sheikh or whoever. He's speaking from the point of view of experience. And that type of conversation is different. The conversation of experience is much different than the conversation of book. It's much different than me or you listening to what I just said and then going and telling somebody else, well, you know, you should meditate and you should do this and you should do that. Once you've engaged in it and then you understand your own experiences and then you begin to feel it and you begin to see it, then when you speak to people, it's much more powerful, it's much more intimate. It's much more real. It's not as abstract, though it is. It does feel tangible. Because you experienced it. And so what I'm saying is that we should be people of experience. And understanding who we are. And then taking the time to understand everything else around us. As we say, we want to see the forest, not the tree. Better yet, we want to be above the forest with the eagle-eyed view. Because the eagle can see everything. He can see the rat or the mouse underneath the leaves in the bottom of the forest, even though he's above the trees. That's what we want. We want to be that bird that's able to see everything. That bird that when he wakes up in the day, he's not concerned about his sustenance because he's completely reliant and confident that God is going to provide for him on that day. He will eat. He'll get out and go search for the food, and he will get the food and be satisfied. And he's very well acquainted as to who he is. There was a farmer who had a bunch of chickens, and he had an eagle. And this other guy came by to visit, and he saw the eagle with these chickens. And the eagle was always acting like the chickens. And he said, why is this eagle over here with these chickens? And he really should be eating them. And he said, well, I found the eagle egg, and I hatched it with the other chickens. And ever since this eagle always thought he was a chicken. So the man, after he spent some time, was getting frustrated watching this eagle being something other than what it really is. So one day he decides, I'm going to change the nature of this this eagle. So he grabs the eagle and he goes on top of this barn and he looks at the bird and says, you're an eagle, now fly. Throws him out, eagle hits the ground. So the guy's frustrated, the eagle doesn't know how to fly. So the next day, he grabs the eagle, goes to the top of the barn and says, look, you are an eagle, fly. He goes out a little further and hits the ground again. Man's still frustrated. Does this for like a week. And one day he grabs the bird. He says, look, you're an eagle. Open your wings and fly, please. So he throws the bird out. Now this time the bird's getting tired of hitting the ground. It's a shame it took him a week, but he got tired of hitting that ground. And so just as he was about to hit it, throws the wings out and flies off. And he's all over the place. The eagle learned he was not a chicken. He learned he wasn't a chicken. He learned he was able to soar. Folks, we're not chickens. We're eagles. And we've got to understand who we are so that we can soar. We've got to be that bird. We're not terrestrial people. Our head shouldn't be like this. Our head should be here. Looking and understanding the cosmos and the universe and how it's all working together because it's the creation of God. And then looking back down at each other and understanding each other. Reaching out to one another. Returning back to trying to regain our senses. The senses that we're losing. They say that the human body needs to be touched 21 times a day just to be balanced. The majority of us don't even know that. And it's not the same for me to touch myself 21 times. That means nothing. We need human interaction. We need to be more than just a text away. We should be a face away, a voice away. We need to interact with one another. Why is the world crazy? Because we have no connection. We have no understanding. We can't just sit down and have a conversation. These two, I met a brother from Dubai yesterday, and another brother, a Pakistani brother from Birmingham. They both told me when they came to the United States, one brother went to the United States, the other brother from Dubai came here. And he said, you know, I had a lot of misconceptions about the people here, because I thought they were all racist. And the brother went to New York and said, I thought the same thing. Until they sat down with people and actually had a conversation. And the brother who went to New York, he was sitting on the train with this European American and was saying, you know, you guys are okay. And the guy said, you guys are okay. You're not what I thought. The young boy from Dubai, he came here and he said, you know, I just talked to these people and my whole attitude has changed. My world perspective has changed. Because he heard all these things from the people who came back. Oh, they're this, and they're people of this, and that, and the other, and they're not this. And so in his heart, he was like, whoa. Again, he's being conditioned to dislike a people he's never even met. But now he's there, and he's meeting, and he's seeing, and he's touching, he's experiencing, and it's not what he thought it was. All we need is to have a connection, a conversation. We need to interact. There's a lot of things going on in this world, and we're not going to make sense of everything. And the question right now is, why is God letting this happen? The question is, why are you letting it happen? Why are you letting it happen? Why are you not stepping up? Why are you not reaching out? Why are you not trying to help people to have truth? And not even just truth of situation, but truth of self. But that will require you to understand the truth of self. To understand, once again, that what? We're eagles. So when do we open up the cage of our souls and allow the bird to fly and be free? When do we open up our wings and begin to soar and looking at everything as is with understanding of who we are? When do we become more than what we are? May Allah continue to guide all of us. May Allah continue to allow us to understand the reality of this life. May Allah bless us to regain the senses of smell, hearing, sight, touch, and understanding through all of those. May we be brought back to the simple base, that simple base of creation. Meaning that we've only been created to worship. And may we discover our ways of worship. May we discover how we're going to show our devotion to Allah. To show our love and compassion for each other through our worship. May Allah continue to strengthen us, guide us, and bring us together. Allow us to become closer. Allow us to interact in this life and in the hereafter. I thank you again for coming. I thank you even more so for listening. And I hope that I said something that makes you think. If nothing else. So inshallah, I'll see you guys in the clouds. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.